Hi there, I'm Jackie from Bloom Property Management. The other day I was giving a talk at the Wellington Property Investors Association about future-proofing your properties to make them more sustainable, more comfortable for tenants, and basically last longer as well, which is great for landlords. One of the questions I received from the audience was, what's the best flooring? Now, I must say I was a bit thrown by this question because, well, best flooring for what? So there's so many different options for floorings, and they suit different purposes, of course. So you wouldn't put carpet down in a bathroom, for instance. Definitely not the best flooring for that. So I thought I'd have another stab at answering that question because there is a lot to be said on the topic. It could be a whole talk in itself. So what's the best flooring in terms of sustainability? Well, that's probably earth floor, made of mud with linseed oil massaged into it. Traditionally it was mixed with like hair and ox blood and that kind of stuff. But that's not actually going to be a kind of floor that people are going to use nowadays in most properties. So, and it's really not vegan friendly for that matter. So what is the best flooring for a rental property? Well, it depends if you're building new or you're retrofitting a property. If you're building new, you've got lots of options for flooring, and I prefer floors that are self-finished. So what you have as your flooring material is the finished floor. So this could be things like concrete is a really good finished floor product. You can use, you can polish it and seal it, make it nice and impervious, and it's really easy to care for. It's not very comfortable on joints, so it's not particularly good for older people or young kids crawling around on it. But but it is a good self-finished floor and it lasts forever. The way you can make concrete more sustainable, because concrete is responsible for something like 7% of the world's CO2 emissions, is to add fly ash to the concrete, and that gets done at the plant, and you just order it up with a percentage of fly ash. And talk to your concrete pourer about this, because they will have a ratio that they're comfortable working with. The addition of fly ash uses a waste product, so it bulks out the concrete as well, so using actually less cement in the concrete, and utilising a waste product from somewhere else. But it also adds to the workability of the concrete, so it gets poured and then they've got longer that they can muck around with it before it goes off and cures. But it also increases the rate at which concrete absorbs carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So that's a very good thing. It does darken it, which is really useful if you wanted a dark tinted concrete anyway. It's not a huge percentage, but obviously it will depend on how much fly ash goes in, because it is a darker colour. So it could save you on oxides and so on to colour that concrete, and that could be really useful if you're using it in a passive solar house, for instance, that you can have a dark coloured thermal mass made out of concrete with fly ash added. So that would be quite a sustainable solution for that situation. Now, concrete isn't for everyone, and certainly if it's a multi-storey wooden building, a concrete mid-floor probably wouldn't be appropriate because of the amount of support that would need, and you wouldn't want to do too thin a concrete layer on something anyway because of the risk of cracking with the substrate moving and so on. So it's not a perfect solution, and certainly concrete is responsible for, as I said, 7% of global carbon dioxide emissions in its manufacture, in cement, I should say. So what else have you got? So wooden floors are great if they're from a sustainable type of timber. So the Forest Steward Council, FSC, has a rating system for different types of timber. Pine is quite largely plantation grown, so it's obviously has a high rotation and so on, but you can get Tasmanian blackwood and which is a Acacia meloxanon, and various other timbers like that are forest farmed. Things like Kowilla is getting a bit borderline because they come from tropical countries and not necessarily sustainable. So do think about those sorts of timbers if you want a timber floor. Timber floors do require sealing with something, and there's a huge range of sealers available for them, from quite highly volatile and highly toxic sealers that mean you have to vacate the property for quite a while after they are applied to let them off gas and so on. It would be quite unpleasant and headachy to be in those environments, to ones that are really sustainable, and things from like the Natural Paint Co. that are seal but are not harmful to humans, and so they're quite natural and gentle on the body, gentle on the environment. So, you can be more sustainable with making those sealant choices. Then we move into sort of hard flooring options, so tiles and so on. Tiles are great in that they can be quite enduring and so on. Think of like Roman mosaics; they're still, still in use thousands of years later. So obviously it's a testament to the craftsmanship that went into them in the first place, and also the care. Now there's lots of things about tiles, depending on how you lay them, how big a tile format, that has an impact on how well they wear. So do think about that, the colour of grout and so on, whether it's an appropriate colour for the placement of the tile. For example, light grout in a bathroom right behind the sink or in the shower stall is going to get grotty and look horrible. No matter how well you clean it, it's going to stain. So that might not be the most sustainable, because you'll need to remove that at some point just to make it look aesthetically better, even though its performance might be perfect. So the longevity of things is very important. And you can mitigate that somewhat in having a large format tile instead of small format tiles with lots of grout lines, because grout is more porous than the tile itself. But there's also different qualities of tile. So there's some that are quite absorbent and low temperature fired, to ones that are quite high temperature fired. And although that changes the embodied energy in the tile with the firing process, it can change the longevity and durability of the tile. But there are different tiles for different purposes, so seek out a specialist about what one's the right one for your job. What else was I going to say about tiles? Some of them can also be sealed, and again, using an appropriate sealer can make the big difference to how sustainable they are. And making sure you're using the right one in the right place. But also, I do see a lot of situations where people are getting tiles from the other side of the world. And I do wonder about the embodied energy that transportation puts into those tiles. So if you can find a tile that's locally produced, then it is going to be more than likely more sustainable and more easy to trace what sort of process went into that. So do think about how far your tiles and all of your building materials travelled before they got to where you are. So carpet is another question that people ask about. How sustainable is carpet? There has been a push lately back to wool carpets for being more sustainable, because they're a natural product, they're grown on a sheep's back, and so therefore they're renewable. Not so vegan friendly if you're a vegan who doesn't like using any sort of animal products, and no, sheep are generally not harmed in the processing of their wool. In fact, it makes them more comfortable to have that wool removed annually. They are bred to be woolly and to be shorn. But the problem with wool carpets is that they're never 100% wool. They usually have a synthetic backing on the carpet, so it might look like jute, but behind the jute you will find a plastic netting, basically, that everything is stitched into and holds it all together. So it's not ever going to be 100%. So if you're using wool carpet that's old and removed from a property on your garden, for instance, as a bit of a weed mat, which is a pretty good use for it, you'll often find that you have to remove a layer of plastic out of your garden, and it breaks down and puts microplastics into the environment, so not great. The other issue about wool carpet, well, and another issue, there is several, is that the process of turning wool into carpet is actually quite an industrial process and involves quite a lot of chemicals and heat and lots of water. So it does take a lot to manufacture a wool carpet that is not very sustainable. That does need to be considered. The final thing about carpet that is a negative is that carpet fibres do tend to hold on to stains, and so in an investment property in particular, where you don't know who's going to be in the property and doing what and what sort of level of care they're going to offer that carpet, you may find it gets stained at a lot faster rate than you might find acceptable in your own home. And it is very hard to get those stains out of a wool carpet. The dyes in the carpet can be quite sensitive to cleaners, so you can get an off-coloured patch around any stain that makes it seem worse than it would have been if they just hadn't cleaned it at all. So yeah, you do need to think about how easy it is to care for this, because once the aesthetic appeal diminishes, you're going to need to replace that carpet. And even if it was the most sustainably produced wool carpet in the first place, if you have to go through it on rather a fast rotation, it no longer is as sustainable as it could have been. So the alternative to a wool carpet is a solution dyed nylon, and that's not without its issues as well. The beauties of solution dyed nylon is that it is a smooth fibre, it doesn't attract dirt, it doesn't hold on to stains, so it's very easy to clean, which means you can get a lot of longevity out of it from that point of view, and that it tends to remain quite lofty and so on. It doesn't mat down like a wool carpet can do after a lot of wear. So you can get a longer lifetime out of a solution dyed nylon carpet, but they are nylon, they're synthetic. And so the use of the carpet, just walking back and forth on it and vacuuming it and all the rest of that, is going to be producing tiny little bits of plastic that will get into the environment and into our bodies and all sorts of things. And these plastics can be mimicking natural hormones and so on, so it actually is quite disruptive to living systems. It's not just about having bits of plastic in our gut, it's what they do to our bodies once they're in our systems that is the issue with microplastics. So solution dyed carpet isn't perfect either. I don't think there is a perfect option for a carpet. There is things like jute rugs and kua and all sorts of other natural fibres, but they do tend to be quite dusty and break down quite easily, and again, stain prevention is quite difficult. So yeah, I don't think there is such thing as a perfect natural fibre in a rug or a carpet. You just have to bear this in mind and be prepared to take the one that you feel is less harm for the situation that you have. So that's covered concrete, carpet, tiles. That pretty much leaves us with, and wood, and that pretty much leaves us with other solutions. So for me, the closest to perfect flooring that I can think of is cork. The problem with cork where I live is that cork is mainly produced in Spain, which is the opposite side of the earth to where I live. So from that point of view, it's not great. It's also very expensive in New Zealand. I'm often amazed when I see overseas programs talking about how cheap cork was for them. It is not cheap in New Zealand, but there's lots of benefits of cork. So if I can encourage any cork oak growers out there to plant plantations in New Zealand so we can have a sustainable cork industry here, that would be super. So cork is a natural insulator, so it makes it warmer underfoot. It's also got some bounce to it, so it's a bit more gentle on bodies. If you fall over onto your cork floor, you're going to hurt yourself a bit less than other surfaces other than a nice thick carpet. It is water resistant, so cork floats, right? So it actually repels water from within its structure. It's got closed cells, and so it's fine in wet areas and kitchens and bathrooms if it's appropriately treated. So it's nice on that front. It is also sound dampening. Now, I don't like a noisy environment. I like things to be nice and peaceful. That's why I live out in the country. And trust me, it's not as quiet as you might think out in the country, but still. But yeah, cork is quite sound insulating, so you get a less noise coming up through flooring, and it does tend to dampen sounds inside an environment. So I have cork here on my wall just to help reduce sound around my computer desk and so on. So cork can come in different colours and so on, so it's quite nice in that respect, but obviously every time you treat cork, it is reducing its sustainability. So yeah, and the other good thing about cork is that it's renewable. So it grows as the bark of a tree, and the bark is harvested in very careful layers that leave the living tissue still on the tree, so the tree continues to grow, and that cork bark gets thicker and thicker until it gets to the point where it's able to be harvested, and then they strip that bark off and it goes and gets processed, and the tree continues to grow back on the branches again. And so I think they have something like a 20-year rotation for cork harvesting, so it is quite land intensive, but the trees are doing all sorts of wonderful things like taking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and turning it into cork. So yeah, cork is lovely. It is hideously expensive though, and for that reason it is often not within reach of most people for most applications. So there's my thoughts on flooring. If you've got any comments, please let me know, and I wish you best in finding the most sustainable solutions for your particular property to be a bit more future fit, smarter, and better for everybody's health. See you next time.